Hello, book friends. Terry from Terry Talks Books here to do a wrap-up of my February reading. And I promised you I would do that, about a week ago. I did a single review on one of the books, Northwoods by Daniel Mason, and I'll mention that again in a moment. And at the end, I gave you a preview of the 5 books I read in February. And I consider that quite good to have read 5 books during a shorter month, somewhat shorter month, a little bit longer this year, I guess, by a day. Anyway, we all know about leap year. Now we're dealing with time change. I'm not. Most people are. But anyway, we are moving right along here through the year very quickly. And I feel very good about my reading so far. I did fabulous in January. For me, I'm happy, and in February, happy again. So I'm going to talk about the 4 books that I didn't talk about already. So the first book I read was Northwoods by Daniel Mason, and I am not really going to say anything about this. If you want to know about this one, go watch my previous video, which is a half-hour review of just this. It's my thoughts more. I don't even know if I'd call it a review. It's just my rather scattered thoughts, because this is a hard book to talk about. But in case you have missed that, I do gush about it, and I did give it 5 stars, and I really do hope to read it again in the future. That is how much I liked it. Now, I know that this book is controversial. People seem to either love it or they really don't get along with it. So if you want to know what I thought, go watch that other review. So now on to the 4 books that haven't had any love yet from February. The first book I read was after Northwoods. I read Killers of the Flower Moon, The Osage Murders and the Birth of the FBI by David Grann. And I'm going to try to, it's on my Kindle. It's on an old Fire Kindle. So sometimes it glares a bit much. So I am not going to continue to hold this up because it's a little problematic. So there you go. Most of you have seen this cover. Intriguing, right? I particularly like the, what grabbed me was the subtitle, which is The Osage Murders and the Birth of the FBI. And I'm like, oh my, I think I need to read that one. So that book is, I gave it 4 stars just to start you out. And it was published in 2017. It is a true crime narrative nonfiction is how I would describe it. It read very, very much like a piece of fiction. You know, it really grabbed my attention, really held me. I wanted to find out what in the world is going on, what is happening. And I lost track of sometimes the fact that this was nonfiction, quite honestly. And it starts out back into the 1800s, because it goes into a little bit of the history of the different things that happened with the Osage peoples in the 1800s, happened to many of the Native American tribal groups. You know, the treaties would be made with these different tribal groups. They would be given land. They would be made to leave the land they were living on, go live on this new plot, and here's the agreement. And then again and again and again, the American government, the U.S. government, would decide to renege on the treaty. Just, it's shameful. It's a part of our history that just, I get angry. I get angry when I think about it. So, and I don't even have enough Native American in me, a tiny bit. But I don't have enough to be the person really upset by it, and it upsets me. So anyway, like I said, it reads really well, very quickly. the main focus when we're not looking at the history of what happened with the people and how we got to where we were when the plot takes place. So that it takes place in the 1920s, but then it stretches on. So we get the history of the people and the doings of the U.S. government, and then we have the storyline, the crime, and it's placed in the 1920s. But then, because of things I'm going to talk about, it keeps going, and I don't even remember what decade we even, in the 1900s, we even left off. And then, of course, the book is being written in published in 2017. So, yeah, that's quite the spread. And it's a story that needs to be told. It's just one of many stories that should be told. There are people, this is in Oklahoma. You've got northern Texas, northern Texas involved. And, people don't know the history. People who live there don't know this. It's like, why did I, I've heard people comment on, after reading this book, why have I never heard of this? Yeah, good question. And I am particularly interested in how the FBI, FBI is an interesting thing too. So we, in the 1920s, the Osage Indian Nation was one of the richest per capita in the world. Okay, I didn't know that. That's interesting. And of course, oil is why, how that came about. And there's the whole story behind this and how this people group, this nation, the Osage Nation, negotiated to keep the rights for the land that they were on, and also the underground rights. Okay, that plays into it as well. So it's not just the land, but water, oil, underground rights, minerals, things like that. And so they're very wealthy, and this apparently just cannot be tolerated. And there are, these murders start taking place, and one by one, these very mysterious murders start taking place, and they're just always mysterious. They're always mysterious murders. One woman, kind of our main character, Molly Burkhart, she is married to a white man. She basically watched as her entire family was mysteriously murdered. Her older sister was shot. Was that her older sister? Yeah, and I think one of her younger sisters had a mysterious wasting illness. She was very healthy and suddenly developed this wasting illness. It just didn't play right. Her mother was slowly poisoned. This happened to a number of our, I'll call them characters, but the people mentioned, these are actual historical people. And this is that's just the beginning. I mean, it just kept going on and on and on. It just kept, it's like, so, no, these are all connected. We know they're all connected. So, and then anyone who did try to investigate was murdered. It's like, murder. They didn't just fall off the train with, their hands tied behind their back and a bag over their head, that kind of thing. So, and so the Osage death toll, it kept rising. And so the newly created FBI, it was called something else, and I didn't write that down, but the newly created FBI under J. Edgar Hoover, is that when he came along, took over. But that bureau was corrupt. I have thoughts about the FBI still to this day. Not going to talk about it here. But they took over. It was corrupt. It was always botched. The investigations would always be botched. And so J. Edgar Hoover came along. I don't think it was because he was a good guy. I think it was because ego, and he needed the FBI to succeed. And this was a blot on, he took it personally, I guess. So anyway, he put together an undercover team, or he put someone named Tom Tom White. He was a former Texas Ranger. He put him on this, and Tom put together an undercover team. One of them was Native American, so he was working basically for the FBI. I thought that was kind of interesting, and really this, they had to look at things, just there. It was just corrupt beyond corrupt, and this is an old story. The Department of Interior could declare one of the, they got sent to government schools, Catholic schools, government sponsored. They were had things like, the Department of the Interior could declare one of the Osage incompetent and appoint a guardian. And the point of that is because the Osage had set this up, and everything got negotiated out. The rights could not be sold. They were called head rights, and they couldn't be sold. They were just inherited. And so you could work around that, right? A corrupt system could work around that. You'd get a person declared incompetent, and so a guardian is appointed. The guardian now has control over all of that person's, and thereby the family's finances, and remember, they're quite wealthy at this point. So you can see how that goes. I mean, you can just smell the corruption right there. And this is just one thing of many, the relocations, and then, here's your land, we don't want it, we'll put you here, isn't this nice? And then, oh, there's oil, oh, we want it back, and then renege on the treaty, okay? So that's what's going on there. So it was just basically a story of a sinister conspiracy. It was very sinister. It was definitely a conspiracy. And notice I didn't say conspiracy theory. It was a conspiracy. I mean, it was, these things happened. And it was very much an indictment of the prejudice toward, people who weren't white, basically, or of European descent. But very specifically towards the Native American peoples, just a huge prejudice. And so I will end by saying that the author provided notes, which I found quite interesting, and a select bibliography, if one wanted to do some more reading on that. So that is the Killers of the Flower Moon. I recommend this. I think it is a point in history, and it's a good representation of some things that went on here that I think are still going on. They're still going on worldwide. Honestly, you could take things out. And a book like this is pretty important to just draw attention to things like this. It's important. Okay, so that one. Next book up, Jam on the Vine by LaShonda Catrice Barnett. And this book was published in 2016, and I gave this one 4 stars. I really, really appreciated this book. I would describe it as a historical novel, a coming-of-age novel, and it showed the important role of the African-American newspaper in U.S. history. Not something I even ever really stopped to think about. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. African-American owned, run newspapers. Why don't we ever hear about this? Read this book. And it might just lead you down a rabbit hole to look into it further. But it is very much a chronicle of the life of an African-American woman journalist named, I think her first name is pronounced Ivo, I-V-O-E. I'm going to pronounce it Ivo Williams. And it is somewhat feminist, I would say, quite honestly. And there's her and her family, they're moved from the Deep South up into the Midwest. I thought it did a fabulous job capturing the injustices of the era, which was, oh goodness gracious, did I write it down? I didn't even write it down. Does it say on the back? quickly. Early to mid 20th century, clearly. Why didn't I write that down? Ooh, gotta get better at these things. Do I need to see quick dates? No quick dates. Anyway, we'll just say, well, I think okay, so it doesn't come up as far as I thought. I do believe May 1925 is where it ends. And so we go back and we watch Ivo, I think, before the turn of the century. Yeah, it starts September 1897. So you have a bit of a length of time to see how some things changed over time. And I do believe there's some discussion over how, you know, there was Civil War, things changed, yet didn't change, right? And so, anyway, I was just fascinated following the life of this young woman, and to see her, she just really pursued. She really persisted and pursued, and again, it captured the injustices of the era, and I thought it did a good job of showing you through the storyline instead of just telling you about many of these injustices. And just, you know, some of it you'll just kind of is just be in disgust over some of what went on. It shouldn't have been going on, and yet it did. And moving north wasn't always the solution that maybe we want to think of it as. So I thought, and the only real criticism I came up with on this book was that the author, her transitions sometimes from one scene into another, I'd be like, what? Wait, what? Wait, go back. What just happened? And so it was that was a little bit distracting. It wasn't so distracting that, I still gave it 4 stars. And it was just an amazing read. It's something I would encourage you to read, and it might get you off on a bit of a rabbit hole. You might, find the pursuit of this particular, the African American newspapers, very interesting. So that is Jam on the Vine. Love that book. Then the next one is What You Are Looking For Is in the Library by Michiko Aoyama. And the translator, it was written in Japanese. It's a Japanese book. And Allison Watts was the translator. So the book was published in 2020 and the translation in 2023. I also gave this one 4 stars. I did. And then I took down some notes, just different things I was thinking about. And I went back. I noticed when I picked the book up, can you see all those little markers on the side? Yeah. I had no idea. Apparently, I have a lot of things I marked. I don't even know to tell you what they are right now. So I'll have to go back and see what I missed in my review. But anyway, here's the book. And of course, a very nice and cover that, might draw you in. It's got the little cat. We're going to talk about books. We got some books, and I don't know as though we necessarily talked about coffee or tea, but we've got a little cup there, and yeah, nice cover. So this book it read fast. It's not, I would consider it short, partly because about 300 pages, and you can have a 300-page book that feels really, really long. It takes a long time to read. And then you can have a 300-page book like this one that just read so quickly and was such a joy to read that it felt very short. It really, really did. So this one here, I would describe this as an ode to the magic of libraries, community and friendship, and how all of that plays into each other, quite honestly. One of the characters who shows up, this is a series of stories. Okay, so we have a series of connected stories. There's a librarian that goes there, and other characters, they kind of weave in and out of each of the stories, but only one character is focused on in each of the stories. But the librarian shows up, and of course, when you come in, you're greeted with, "What are you looking for?" So that is librarian Sayuri Komachi. She's very enigmatic. She seems to read souls. When you walk up and she says, what are you looking for? And you start to describe what it is you're looking for. She does these interesting things, and she's all attention, right? And it's actually kind of creepy. And she'll, whip in, some information and print out, a list of books for you to go pull off the shelves based on what you told her. But she's picking up on other things, the soul reading. There's always a book at the end that she suggests that is like, what does that have to do with what this person's looking for? But it turns out to be what they really need to read or consider. And I saw the theme as how books can change our lives. It goes in with the Ode to the Magic of Libraries, right? But the theme, I would actually say, is how books can change our lives, which is, I read a book in January called Days at the Morisaki Bookshop, and I thought the same thing of that one, how, one of the themes of that, major theme, is how books and how stories can just literally change our lives. And so we see that in the series of connected stories, and each one being told from the viewpoint of the character that is the focus of that story. And we have characters such as, they're all trying to make some kind of contemplating doing something new or switching something, up in their lives. We have a retired gentleman. We have a sales attendant who she feels stuck in her job. She's very unsatisfied, stuck in her job. And there's a working mother longing to be an editor. I think it was a magazine editor, but anyway, she wants to be an editor. But she's a working mom, and she's not quite sure how to go about that, but she's longing for this. She's really, really longing for it. So those are just three, I think I mentioned three of the characters. Are there five? There might have been five. And I thought that this was, the way it worked is, it just seemed like such a book of wisdom. There was at least one story in there where I thought, man, I wish somebody had kind of suggested something like this to me when I was young. How to achieve, as you're, you start working and you don't always know what it is you really, really want to do with your life. And as you get older, you discover, oh, I would like to, I'm really interested in this, but now how do I change gears? And, how can you do that? So something like have two careers going at once, so to speak. One that's you've got to pay your bills and all of that, but you can slowly kind of bring this other thing that you would like to do in as, something on the side that you just, maybe spend all your time doing. And you love it so much, it doesn't feel like another job to you. And you may or may not be getting paid, or you may be getting nominal pay for it. But, something like that I wish somebody had, the wise person had sat me down and said, here's what you can do. Here's what you can do. You're going to have to work hard at it. But the thing that you really want to do won't really feel that hard. And it'll probably, energize you as opposed to, beating you up and wearing you out. And you can do this. So I just kind of saw it as a book of wisdom and inspiration. I thought it was incredibly charming. And anything else I wrote down here? No, not really. So there you have it. What you are looking for is in the library. So again, 4 stars. I can highly recommend that. Okay, the last book I am going to talk about, I gave this thing 5 stars. If you follow me on Instagram, if you follow me on Goodreads, and I do have links down below in the description box for some of my other places you can find me, because as you all know, Ms. Terry B is my channel name here on YouTube, and I'm hesitant to change it to Terry Talks Books and, have the brand, so to speak, because I've had it for so long, people know that it's Ms. Terry B, I think. I think so. Anyway, so if you follow me those other places, you've already heard me say a few things about this book, and it is Play It As It Lays by Joan Didion. People, I hated this book. Let me tell you. This book was published in 1970, and it is it's a very short book, really, and it's non-linear, and sometimes you get things like that. So it's a fast read. I had to slow, lots of white space. Printer used tons of white space. And spacing between, the spacing between the lines, gaps between one chapter and another. So it is fast, and I had to tell myself to slow down for a number of reasons. Number one, the book is terrifying. The book is brutal, okay? And it's depressing. And I absolutely loved it. And I will not say that about too many books that I describe the former way and then say I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I'll read it again. I'm keeping this book. Okay, it's not going anywhere. So what do I want to say about it? I want to say that the book, I mentioned that it was published in 1970, and it captures a generational mood. There's a from the 60s, and it's, there's ennui, there's the sex, drugs, and rock and roll, there's, or you could just say pills, booze, and sex, however you want to describe that. But it all contributes to this ennui, and maybe people are just too spoiled. I don't know. There was something going on in the 60s, that's for sure. And so it really captured that mood. And I'm old enough that I'm familiar with it. Not old enough to have been so embedded into that generation. I was a little bit too young, but I could see it. I was old enough to know to kind of see what was going on around me and to notice it. And, when things shifted away from that some and went a little bit different direction, I knew, I could remember the 60s and, the mood of the 60s. And the contributing to this is Didion's prose is very spare. Her prose is incredibly spare, and I mentioned that it's non-linear. It's not it's not distressing. It's not a distressing form of lack of linearity. It's not like you get lost. Like, what's the story? What's the plot? What's the no. Very spare. Very haunting. I would call it blistering. I mean, it's just, I've already used some words that are like that. I did not see this as a moral commentary, though. Absolutely didn't see it as that. Didn't read it that way. If somebody has read it that way, I'd be kind of curious to see how they explain that, because I did not pick up on that. That's not what was going on. It's just literally, playing it as it lays. I'll come back to that. It's like, here you go. Here it is. Here's what it is. And it's not and I think most of us will read this and go, okay, I'm not going to swear. I'm not going to use the swear word. What a hot mess. What a hot mess this is. These people, hot mess, and shallow, and all of those kinds of things. So we go from Hollywood. It really is a book of LA, Hollywood in the 60s, and the people who lived there, worked there, to Vegas and the barren Mojave Desert in between, and all of that really, it so plays into, it's just such a metaphor for a very arid soul is how I would describe it, especially the scenes where we're out in the Mojave, where, you can, really feel the aridness of it. And I will mention this, and again, come back to it, but kind of in the realm of metaphor is the title, Play It As It Lays, it's a gambling phrase, as far as I can tell. Pretty sure that's something I've known in the past, and picked up on, again, here in context. So I do, that's kind of, there's an interesting tie there, you know. So we're Vegas, you know, gambling. And then, of course, Hollywood and the lifestyle, gambling with your life, gambling with your relationships, and then playing it as it lays. So that's how I see that. This book, one of the scenes that got me, it was a very powerful scene, is our character, who I think seemed to me very somewhat autobiographical. Not, you know, it's not, you know how these things are. But I think Didion's writing in some things she knows, things she's seen, things she's felt very much. I really got that off of it without looking it up. I didn't look anything up. I didn't look to see, you know, what Didion may have had to say about this herself. And I just found it so unforgettable. But one, the scene that really strikes me, it's so LA. I lived over there, in and out of Hollywood. You know, my husband was a musician. That's a whole other story. I don't know if I'll ever talk about it or not, but you know, I got to see enough, you know, to you know, this really smacked me in the face. But in order for our character to kind of escape, she couldn't really escape very well, but escape her, you know, she had a very troubled marriage, had been troubled for a long time, something with the child, the daughter, who, there's just problems there. The disastrous, and the child, I think the daughter, didn't live with her. She was being cared for, had troubles and was being cared for. Disastrous love affairs. She's, you know, trying to, so she gets in her car and she turns the radio on blast and starts driving the freeways. And back then, I arrived in the LA area long enough ago, you could get in your car and you could just drive from freeway to freeway to freeway in the middle of the night and practically have these to yourself. You know, you could, it was a thing. It was just a thing. And then you could just head on out, you know, follow the freeway on out. And there was a quote that captured this. It says, you get in the car, drive the freeways in the fast lane with the radio blaring. And then it says, until the freeway runs out, and somewhere, no place at all, where the flawless burning concrete just stopped. And I went, that is a direct quote. That part of somewhere, no place at all, where the flawless burning concrete just stopped. And in this case, you know, she's in the Mojave, but it just, like, that just popped me one, you know, that sentence. I don't know, it got me. And some of it is because I'm somewhat familiar, you know, I can see it, you know, I can, just enough, just enough. And for her, it would have been more so. So this is, goodness gracious. Again, it was terrifying. It was absolutely ruthless. It's the thing I loved about it the most. Didion did not sugarcoat or romanticize Hollywood. This is a pet peeve of mine. I'm not going to do it. Nope, I'm not going to do it. Go on a rant about that. Okay, this gets romanticized. Yeah, it's showing, it's the, you know, the mess, the hot mess, and you know, it's so depressing, but often it's still being romanticized. And Didion did not do that. It is just brutal. And I would say, hard to read? Yep. Yes. Yep. Emotionally depressing? Yes. Yes. So hard to read, emotionally hard to read. Did I like it? I've already told you that. Just for its brutal honesty, I just would say that, you know, Didion, brutal honesty, and she literally just played it as it lays. So I will leave you there with that. Maybe you'll be interested in that one. Maybe I should have put that first in case you're not watching to the end here. Maybe I should always put the 5-star first. So anyway, there you go. I thought I shouldn't have done such a long review on Play It As It Lays, because I could have come back and done one all on its own. So that is what I read in February. And I did give you, you know, I often will mention my this is kind of my thinking now for future videos. And, you know, if you have, tell me what you think if you want a video like this. But I do give star reviews on Goodreads, and I also maintain a Library Thing account. I primarily use that privately, not as a social area, but I do rate them, and they allow you to do half stars in Library Thing, and Goodreads does not. But I find star ratings pretty arbitrary, and so I thought about talking about that a little bit, just making just a short chatty video about what I'm doing with my stars, because people can do, what is, when you say 3 stars, when you say 2 stars, when you say 4 or 5 stars, what do you mean by that? I have talked about that. I, mentioned it before here and there within a video, but I've never made an actual chatty video and telling you all, when I rate these and I tell you what star rating I gave it, here's what I'm trying to tell you, in a very, precise, easy for you to get some idea, did I even like it way. So if you would like to see a video like that, let me know. Even if nobody says anything, I'll probably do that video. Anyway, thanks for being with me here on BookTube, my friends, and I will see you in the next video. Bye-bye.